I think it's all very interesting, and I love the weirdness of how modern dance came to be modern dance, but I don't really consider myself to be a modern dancer. I consider myself to be a choreographer, and that schism, the old schism between ballet and modern dance, starting early on, with the genius of the very early feminist, what was called modern dance, barefoot dancing, interpretive dancing, versus classical ballet was never bridged more betterer than it was in the Diaghilev period. So, and that's long, long ago, and it doesn't relate nearly at all to anything that's happening today. It's gone so past that, and there have been other schisms and other, ridiculous fights between those things, like these people, these ballet people like this, these modern dance people like this, these ones are dumb, these are smart, these are fat, these are skinny. It's like, these are serious, these are not. It's like, oh, come on. There's so little dance anyway that we should just take a look around and appreciate everything we can. Doesn't mean you have to like it or think it's good, but it's all being done, and everyone who's doing it means it, even if it's like so wince-producing you want to kill yourself. Even if it's like, only you appreciate the drawings of your 3-year-old on the refrigerator, they're still important and fabulous. And not everybody has to get the same thing. And let's see. I would say I get most of my inspiration, a word I don't use very much, from composers more than from choreographers. Of course, I worship Balanchine, who was awfully good. And today I was talking about Jack Cole, who was so underappreciated compared to Bob Fosse, who was overappreciated. And I could go through a list, but I want everybody to watch everything and like or dislike what you want freely. And if you don't like it, walk away. And there's no responsibility to support an art if you don't think it has merit. But you have to at least have watched it and listened to it and, taken stock of it. Then it's like, oh, did she mean? You don't even have to know what she meant. You just watch it and listen to it and, know that everybody, even Broadway, I'm not a big fan of Broadway in general, but I'm a big fan of the people who perform on Broadway. It's like, right on, good for you, 8 shows a week, not a lot of money. I don't like that show, but good for you. And that goes both ways, and it goes in pretty much all of the various performing arts, I think. I go to the opera, sometimes it's really shitty. It's a chance you take. Anyway, did I answer your question? Okay. Mary Vigmon, not bad. How do I work with Harrison? First of all, I loved his music. Long ago, I did my first piece to his music, Lou Harrison, the great, great late American composer. I first choreographed a piece of his in 1980, I think 5 or something. I heard his music and it just completely bowled me over. And I choreographed a piece for the Seattle Gay Men's Chorus. I was living in Seattle with a broken foot. I had a crush on the sign language interpreter. The guy who ran the choir, this is in the early days of the gay choir movement. They were a fabulous choir, and there was always this sign language interpreter on the corner of the stage. There were a lot of hearing impaired gay people, in case you were wondering, or you're one of them, or hello. And I had just heard a piece of Lou's, a recording, and I told the director of the choir I would love to do this piece. It was written for 8 baritone vocalists and a particularly tuned orchestra. And I said, I want to do this piece. And he wrote to Lou Harrison and said, would you mind if we did it, instead of with 8 singers, we did it with 120? And he said, of course. And he came to Seattle where it was rehearsing, and I was teaching there. And this chorus, we did this piece called Strict Songs, an old piece of his. And it was a chorus of 120, my company dancing, and orchestra in front of the chorus, and sign language interpreter. And Lou and his lover, Bill Kolvig, who was a wonderful instrument builder and musician, came to Seattle for all of the rehearsals, brought some of the instruments, the sort of gamelan-y kind of things, and we became fast friends until, well, he died. I didn't die. We're still friends, but one of us is dead. And I've done, 6 or 7 or 8 pieces to his music. He was a very close personal friend of mine. But the thing is, I commissioned music from him, and he wrote some music and said, "Is this all right?" I said, "Yeah, but seems not complete," and he just sent it back and fixed it. It was like he was a dancer, he was a dance accompanist, he was a fabulous, fabulous artist, and as he said, I'm quoting Lou, he said his definition of music was that it's a song and a dance. So a tune and a rhythm, basically, and that's sort of my credo as well. So you hear it, you listen to it, you study it, you find out what are the secrets or not, and just kind of do it. So in fact, when I said I wanted to choreograph the polka, which is the last movement of the last piece, I did that. I choreographed that as a standalone piece, a finale for every program we did for a few months, like 5 minutes maybe if it's slow. And I said, I want to choreograph the polka. He said, "Oh, you mean that little rumba?" And I said, "Well, sure." And it's actually taken a few years for us to bring it up to the tempo of a polka, because it used to be a little bit more lumbering. And I'm not even answering your question, except it's kind of a good story. Okay. Do I enjoy bringing back old pieces? Well, I have to say, part of it is pragmatic. I want to see something, or it's a musical thing, or I want something to counter something else on a program. So I only bring it back if I like it, which I do a lot because I think I'm good. So it's like, well, it doesn't matter if you do, but I think this would be a nice dance on this program. So I bring it back. It's kind of the most interesting to me when nobody from the original cast is around. And if you wait long enough, that's going to happen. So we bring them back as I think they're needed. The oldest thing on this program was, of course, me, but the oldest dance was Prelude and Prelude, and no one has done it before. So I brought in a dancer from the past to look at the ancient, scratchy, cuneiform videotape to do this dance. And it's a big challenge. It's a different style of dancing from what we do today. My style, or whatever it's called, has changed over the years. But it's, they're so good, and they learn in a different way. And it was fast. I didn't watch a lot of the rehearsals. I went in when it was done. It's like, oh, that looks familiar. And then I recognized it enough to be able to coach it a little bit. So it's fascinating and interesting. And I do it from time to time because I don't want all my dances to look the same. So, which they don't, I hope. But to bring something back from the past is also edifying for the dancers and the musicians to do something that we haven't done for a long time. And I call it my ancient style, because I can. My brain has changed, my work has changed, but it's still the same sort of core interests in what I do, music, choreo musical ideas. And so for me to watch Prelude, it's like, what's going to happen now? I don't even know all the time. So yes, the answer is I don't even know what you even asked, but bringing back dances from the past is a very valuable experience. How do I choose the music? It's practical in various ways. I use a lot of chamber music because we tour a lot, and there's a lot of orchestra stuff, and I direct operas and choreograph that from time to time. I love vocal music. There isn't any on this program, but I've done it a lot over the years. I'm a real Baroque music queen, so that's one reason I don't do a lot of Baroque music, because I would just do that only. It's variety. Obviously, this was 2 musicians. That's almost as small as it can get, and do a full show. And so my music ensemble, I don't want everything to just be piano, because that would be really easy. I mean, for me, not for the pianist, but I like to vary it. I like to do different periods. I have to, the practicality of touring with things, what's needed on a program, sort of. So we mix and match all the time, and I don't like to do the same thing twice, and that includes specifically musically. So I choose music that is intriguing to me and I don't have a solution for. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
You're always listening to music.
I'm always listening to music when there's music playing. I don't imagine it very much. But also I do much less recreational listening than I used to at home. I used to play music constantly and have headphones, and now it's like, no, I don't want to hear anything. And that's partly because I have living musicians every day in rehearsal and on the road. It's like, this is great. I don't want to hear a shit recording of something, or a great recording of something, but because it's not a living thing, I'm less engaged. So I study music and listen to it. And I have a big sort of music library in my brain, kind of. And I listen to new stuff and old stuff, and I kind of like music, let's face it. It's like a music job that I do with dancing. He asked if the music is basically, is it music first or dancing first? It's pretty much always music first. Occasionally I'll have some crazy idea about a scene or a drama or, an experiment, and then I look for music. But almost always it's because a piece of music engages or annoys me, or I can't get it out of my head, or I just heard it on the radio in the car, or I've known it since I was a child. So I try not to predict what music is going to occur to me. There are things that I've tried to choreograph for 30 years and just never did, and then finally it kind of snaps and I can do something else. The example is Grand Duo. The polka was like, I must choreograph this right away, choreographed it, and then maybe 6 months later or so, I retro choreographed the rest leading up to it. And in fact, I did that here in a residency off season here at the Pillow over there in the Duke place. So it was fabulous. We were alone in the scary autumn with all the wild animals, and I just worked on that dance that would turn itself into the culmination being the polka. So I try to trick myself. Does energy change in the different venues? That's kind of a mystical question. What changes in venues is the space and the acoustic and the audience, which of course changes every night wherever you are. That isn't a monolith. I saw a show last week. Are you okay? Breathe through your nose. I saw a show last week at the Joyce Theatre, which, as you know, has no orchestra pit like this. We do live music here because we wouldn't do it otherwise. But it's tricky. The Joyce Theatre in New York. I saw dancers from the Royal Danish Ballet doing excerpts of Bournonville, the great choreographer Bournonville. And it was wild because they did Act 2 of La Sylphide, fabulous, fabulous dance. And the corps de ballet of Sylphs was 3 strong instead of like 20. And the stage opened for Act 2 of, and it just curtain goes up, and there's like a tiny stump over here and like a rose on the floor because we're in a glade or something in a forest. And they're so good. The choreography is so good. They come out, they look gigantic, and they're wearing opera house makeup and facial expressions. It's like, whoa. And really loud recorded music. And somehow it was like this bizarre magic spell. I would have preferred it in some gorgeous opera house with an orchestra, but somehow they pulled it off. So what touring companies do, which is different from the ballet industry, who are usually fixed in their theater, like New York City Ballet or San Francisco Ballet, they perform in that opera house and very rarely tour. We spend so much of our time adapting to new spaces. It's also pretty hot. That makes a big difference. But the dimensions of the stage, and you have to fit a dance that was built to travel into different proportions all the time. So a lot of our work is finding the diagonal or the space between people or how to make it work in the lighting. That's a lot of work, and it's constant. It's not just getting the dance ready and warming up. It's like, how can this be seen and heard in this particular venue? So that's fascinating and irritating in equal measure. And absolutely all of those things have an effect, the sort of vibe of the room. And if it weren't live music or live dancers or a live audience, none of that would make any difference. But we have plenty of screens, so you don't have to worry about that. The 4-dimensional idea is an old-fashioned one, and still there's sort of nothing better, I think. I'm not that familiar with the book of Genesis, but I think it was very early on. I'm not a religious fellow, but if there weren't no light, you wouldn't see nothing. So turn on the lights is one thing. It's like, oh, hello, here we are. The sun comes up, there's light. But shows happen at the nighttime. So instead of just being by the light of the moon and the stars, which is wonderful, you have to, even at a matinee, recreate any possible lighting situation that's necessary. The dappled glade, the crescent moon, the rising sun in the modern dance diagonal, the follow spot, the overhead special for the solo on the stool with the long hair. These are all done by a lighting designer. not just because you can't see anything, but because it's an integral part of the whole show. So my lighting supervisor and very often designer, Nick Kahn, who did this show, that's another thing that you have to adjust everywhere you go, like the dancing. You come in, we put in all of this, well, with help of everybody who works here, but the colors and the levels and all of this stuff, and that's part of the tech rehearsal. And ideally, it just seems like, oh, this is where this is happening. So, if you don't notice, like, this is terrible, but if you don't notice it, that often means that you're feeling something and you don't know why. And of course, it's musical and choreographic, but it's also, there's a light, it's like, wait, I never saw it like that before. And that's a skill and an art, and it happens. I don't pay much attention to it until I'm in this theater, of course, because you can't. So when I do a new dance, or something like Prelude and Prelude, which we haven't done for years, you reconstruct something, you make it visible, part one, and then you make it beautiful, and then you make it so that you don't notice it, sort of. I'm sorry, Nick, if you're listening to that, but it's a wonderful thing that people, I don't know anything about it, which is one of my gifts. I can't say anything except I can't see them, or why am I so sad? But lighting has a huge emotional effect, and it changes the temperature of everything. Sorry, I can't do much about that. Yeah, nobody ever asks that, and it's something that is very often overlooked and not credited. But it's a fabulous, interesting, weird job that only a few people do well. Well, few people do it, even fewer people do it well, and your life is spent in the dark. You go outside, it's like, Nosferatu, I've been talking about Nosferatu a lot. I'm extremely verbose and sometimes articulate. I never stop talking. Rehearsal, while they're dancing, I'm saying, like, change this, go, go, go. I try to leave them alone. I can't do it because it's really interesting, and they're super, super instantaneously responsive. I can say, like, Prelude and Prelude, who's going to do the solo? It's an interesting thing, the solo in Prelude and Prelude, which was that's the first part? Yeah. One person does that with the fans, one person does that dance that then everybody does in the repeat. And I tell them, like, right before it starts, it's so fun. And so everybody knows the dance, and then you're sort of put on the spot in an interesting way. But also my dancers are so smart and so into it that, I can say, like, face the other way, or change legs, or you do this instead, on the spot. And it's really, really valuable for keeping aware and alert as a dancer, and also for me, like, I don't write everything down. I say it and other people remember it, and so it's not not me being articulate, it's me trying to draw out a thing that I don't know what it is, because it isn't a word thing, it's a dance thing. And I use many more words than necessary to get the thing to happen.